Welcome everyone to our first Akri developer meeting hosted on February 2nd, 2021. I think the way we'll run this is we'll first start off with introductions, and then we'll go through announcements, followed by discussions and triaging. And at the end, I really want to collect sort of feedback on how this call went, as well as just how we're running Akri in general, especially from you, Giovanni. As sort of an introduction, this meeting is recorded and will later be posted on the Deus Labs YouTube channel. So hopefully everybody is comfortable with that. All the notes for the meeting will also be available later in our HackMD site. So to kick things off, let's start with introductions. I'm Edric. I'm the feature PM on Akri at Microsoft. We'll go to Kate next.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kate. I'm a software engineer at Microsoft, and I am one of the maintainers and core developers for Akri. I'll pass it to Brian.
Hi, I'm Brian. I'm a developer at Microsoft. I've been working on Akri since the start of it. I guess I can pass it on to Roa.
Hi, I'm Roa. I recently joined the Akri team. I'm in Microsoft too.
And then I guess Giovanni, we've seen you.
Hi. I actually work on a completely different field. I work as a freelance developer, front-end developer, but I started being interested in Akri because of my master thesis, because I graduated in computer science, master of computer science at Padova in Italy. So that's it.
Wonderful. So I think we can get things started off here. Let's start off with announcements. The first major announcement that we have is that we now have an official Akri logo. This has been quite a while in the works. Shout outs to Ronan from the Deus Labs team for putting many hours into iterating, reiterating, and taking in our feedbacks to really hammer down our final logo. The logo is pasted in the meeting notes, as well as I'll drop a link in the chat. Has our whole style guide, as well as typography and the different variations of our logo and sort of guidelines on how to use that. For second and third announcement, I'll pass it over to Kate.
Cool. And then just going back to you, Edric, do you mind giving us a little background on the logo design? Because I think that'd be cool for people who weren't involved in it to know a little about.
Absolutely. So as a little bit of background, we can have to go even a little bit further into the naming of Akri. So originally we had a whole bunch of different names. And then we kind of went through the naming process, try to look at trademarks, make sure we're not colliding with other open source projects, as well as a name that is relatively simple and rolls off the tongue, right? And eventually we came up with the name Akri, which was the Greek word for edge. And kind of on that theme, we looked at Kubernetes, which is also a Greek word. And we were also able to come up with the acronym, a Kubernetes resource interface for Akri. So it kind of worked really well in that regards. So going down the Greek theme, we looked at a lot of different Greek inspired motifs, designs. And one thing that kind of stood out was this thing called a meander, which is your typical white and blue sort of spiral pattern that is very prevalent across ancient Greek arts. So kind of with that, we started working, Ronan and I started working that idea into a logo. We originally thought, because Akri was sort of a connection system for a bunch of different things, we had a bunch of different cubes with this pattern on it, kind of connected to each other. And then the more we looked at it, we thought it was a little bit too much, kind of too much going on. So we simplified it to one cube with an inspiration from the meander pattern. And then the last of it was really figuring out the colors. So we didn't want to go with exactly the Kubernetes-based colors, but we wanted to be along the same lines. We were also inspired by some of the previous artwork we did for the previous names that we had for Akri. So all that kind of came together into this final design of the logo.
Thanks for that background, Edric. So going back to the other points in our agenda, we released version 0.1.5 a month or so ago, and that was our first official release with OPC-UA support. So now we can discover devices in industrial settings. It also includes an end-to-end demo and a certificate generator. So if anyone in the community is interested in trying it out, it'd be great to get feedback on that demo and also on the protocol in general. It supports discovery of servers at specified addresses in an Akri configuration, and you can also put the address of a local discovery server, and it will look for OPC-UA servers registered with that. What it does not have support for, and that we're hoping to add support for later, is a network scan for OPC-UA servers, so that you do not have to manually configure addresses for servers or local discovery servers. The next point in our announcements is currently under the works is actually to step back to add a little context. Right now, all of our discovery protocols are all embedded in the Akri agent. So those protocols that we support currently are UDEV, OPC-UA, and IP camera discovery. All of those are embedded in the agent. Say you just wanted to use UDEV, unfortunately, currently you still have support for OPC-UA and ONVIF embedded in that agent. That can lead to larger agent sizes, a bigger footprint for security issues, and also it requires that all additional discovery handlers are written in Rust because it has to be in that one agent. So all of these are issues, and the way we're tackling that is by moving our discovery handlers outside of the agent. So that the agent will be one pod, and then every protocol will run as its own pod. And the agent exposes an interface that those discovery handlers can register with the agent, and then the agent will call out to those discovery handlers whenever a configuration specifies that that discovery handler needs to be used. So that's under the works, and hopefully when that is finished, that will make it easier for community members to extend Akri. You just have to write your discovery handler pod, and you don't have to know the inner workings of the agent or Akri's core code in general. So that's exciting updates. I know, Giovanni, you might have some input you might want to add to that. You added some comments to the chat we have undergoing with that.
Yeah, I think I wrote everything on the comments, so I don't have anything new to add. So I haven't followed the project in the last day. So what was the final decision to go with the gRPC, and what's the final architecture that you have chosen?
So the agent is exposing a gRPC interface, went with that instead of REST. And okay. The discovery handlers themselves are implementing a discover function, which is a streaming function. So the okay. agent will call out to the discover on those discovery handlers, and then the discovery handler itself can decide periodically when to return new devices. So instead of the agent constantly pulling the discovery handlers, it just calls that discovery handler once, and then it's up to the discovery handler to update the agent whenever new devices are discovered or devices go offline. And that way, different protocols may have different rates of updating the agent, and that lets that decision be on the discovery handler instead of the agent.
Okay, then cool. I think, as I said in the comments, for me, the most important aspect of the architecture was being push-based, and I think that with the gRPC seems that goal is achieved. So is it also possible now to have only one protocol discovery pod instead of one per node?
So it is still currently what's being worked on is not addressing that issue.
Okay.
To make sure I understand, you're interested in having one agent that runs per cluster. Is that what you're saying? Okay.
Yes, I would say maybe not just one, but in a limited number, not per node.
So currently,
maybe you wanted to scale horizontally the number, but don't want it to be per node.
That's definitely something that we should look into. Right now, the agent is deployed as a daemon set, and part of that is because some of these discovery handlers are local. So if you think about UDev, it only makes sense for that to be running on every node. But if that's something that you see a good use case for, feel free to put up an issue. You could write a proposal, kind of put your thoughts in there. I know we've chatted about it a bit, but formalizing that so like everyone sees where it is could be great too.
Okay.
Does anyone else have any agenda items they want to bring up? Because then we can address that. If not, we can go into looking at the issues that are currently up and kind of triaging them.
I personally don't have anything.
Great. Okay, let's go ahead and pull up the issues and just kind of do a triage of them. Great. Can everyone see the project roadmap here? Great. So just to add an overview of what is going on this page, to kind of add a little bit of structure to issues as they come up, we want to make sure that they're being addressed. And by addressed, that means adding tags if possible. So enhancement, if it's a new feature, tagging good first issues for people as they come along. If they want to get started with Akri, tagging bug. I think those are our main tags currently. Oh, and documentation. And then we have this list of triage needed for all the issues that we haven't addressed yet in some form. And then we have investigating if we still haven't decided how we're going to support this or whether we're going to support this. It's an ongoing discussion. And then we have backlog if we think, okay, this definitely should be supported. And then we have in progress if currently someone is working on that. And then done, of course, is auto completed. Are there any questions on this format right now? Great. I'll go ahead and pull up one of them currently. So Daz brought up an issue about how our build process could be more verbosely documented and explicitly documented. And he furthermore added a HackMD page that took a stab at extending that documentation. So first of all, I personally have not had a chance to look at that. We should get some eyes on that if people are available to look at that. But it seems like we can go ahead and tag this with documentation, and then it's underway. So unless people are opposed, I was going to go ahead and move that to in progress, if that sounds good. Alrighty. Okay, and then let's move on to the next one. So this was the way we were versioning in our Helm chart. We weren't breaking out the API in the version. So we had akri.sh/v0, and that made it hard for Daz's webhook to kind of pull apart that. Brian, can you help me out here? Did we already merged a fix to this, I think. I'm not sure if this ended up closing out or not. Do you remember?
I don't remember offhand.
We have.
I feel like we made the change to the Helm the Helm chart so that it was there. So I feel like it should be fixed, but I don't know. We should either reach out to Daz and ask him if this is fixed at this point to his liking, or just mark it fixed.
Yeah, that sounds good. I think
maybe assign it
Okay.
to me and I'll look more into it.
Okay, cool. Sounds good. Thanks, Brian. Let's just go ahead and leave that where it is in the roadmap. And Brian, if you figured that out, will you go ahead and move it to done if that is the case? Or close it out, of course.
All right. I mean, I'd say slide it over to the backlog at least, and it's assigned to me. So
sounds good. Or even in progress. Okay, great. And then update key dependencies. So when Akri got started, asynchronous development in Rust was pretty new. And because of that, a lot of the crates we're using are, and because of that, since then, a lot of the crates we're using have developed a lot. So for instance, the Tokyo version we were using and are currently using is 0.2. And I think Tokyo's right now is at 1 point something. And Tokyo's are like async runtime. And a lot of the other crates we use depend on it. So there's a lot that needs to be updated and it's not trivial. I did some background investigation and put a little bit of what all needs to be updated. But if anyone is interested in getting to know the Akri code base, this would be a great issue to go with. And with that being said, do y'all think this would be a good one to tag good first issue?
my general take is that this would be more involved than a first issue.
Yeah.
It's likely going to require, I don't know, a change in kind of the fundamental loops at the bottom of some of the listeners. But
Yeah.
I don't know. It's hard to know what first issue is. I always imagine Rust being complicated enough that if the first issue is anything more than, you know, move this string from here to there, that it might not be good for a first issue.
That's fair. We don't want to.
I think it's maybe a bit too hard as a first issue because changing Tokyo means that you have to go throughout all the whole code base and change everything and check if everything is working again and so on. Usually a good first issue, in my opinion, is something that's limited in the scope. So then you can just change one file and see if it works.
Plus
Okay,
one.
great. Yeah, we definitely don't want to discourage people with a really big issue that we've assigned as being go for it, super simple. So with that being said,
also Rust async is not very friendly to as first issue. I'm struggling myself with Tokyo and all the things.
Yeah, async.
Yeah. It takes a little while. Is there a way that we can label this? Would help wanted be appropriate for this? Is this a bug enhancement? Do people have any thoughts on that?
I'd say we could call it a enhancement, and help wanted is fine until we get like it assigned to somebody or it in progress. I think help wanted is the right thing for it.
Great. And then I'll go ahead and move that to backlog since we definitely want to do that. Great. And we have agent crashes when API server is not available. So I believe the background context to this was that your code was running the agent for a long time, like I think months. And the API server went offline at one point. And when the agent tries to get the configurations and the API server is offline, it panics and bubbles up and just breaks. So he recommended, sorry?
I think that's by design, right? But it's sort of a question of where we want durability to be and where we want to fail fast to be, right? Like what is an expected failure point that we want to survive and what is not. And I'm totally open to this being one of those cases where we're like, okay, maybe the process doesn't crash, right? And it makes more sense to like, survive this sort of momentary outage. But it's, I think, kind of a part of a broader question that we might address somewhere with this is our idea here, that this sort of thing will cause everything to crash, so that a user is instantly aware that something is unexpected is wrong. And this is the sort of thing that we wouldn't crash for, that might happen, that would degrade service, but maybe things continue on.
In this case, so if we were to persist this and not crash, is there a third option here? And Jurka kind of mentioned it, using a cached configuration instead of crashing. I don't know how caching works in this context.
I think
usually caching is a dangerous thing to do. Maybe if the API server crashes, we could retry sometimes for maybe
totally
like 5 minutes. Yeah, and then I think Kubernetes has how do you pronounce Kubernetes? Because my teacher says that in the Greek it's Kubernetes, and everyone pronounces it incorrect. But by the way, I think Kubernetes has some guidelines about the expected availability, and maybe, for instance, when the API server goes down, the node tries to reconnect for some minutes, and maybe the documentation can offer some guideline that Akri can also follow.
I think that's a good idea. We should definitely take a look at kind of what the expected systemic behavior is. And I think you mentioned a word in there that would be helpful too, documentation. We should document the choice that we make. I think when he mentions caching, I think it's literally just like, you keep a map of all of the configurations or instances that you're aware of, and that's what you sort of make changes to locally until you can communicate with the API server. I wonder how things like sharing and the device slots and things like that function when the API server is not available. It's sort of in that moment that you lose your biblical truth, right? That the API server's version of the instance is no longer available. So you don't know if somebody else has taken a slot or if a slot's available. I'm just not sure what the appropriate thing to do at that point is. I kind of feel like maybe if you can't get to the API server, maybe the agent stays up and doesn't change anything that's going on. But at the same time, it certainly doesn't accept any new requests for allocate or anything like that.
Yeah, kind of a standby mode of sorts.
Yeah. And that maybe you could be in standby for however long the sort of Kubernetes recommendation to try reconnecting to the API server is. And if at the end of that, you're still not connected, maybe then you take everything down. I'm not sure.
What scenarios would the API server be down in?
What's that?
What scenarios can we see the API server being down in?
I can imagine the node that it's on goes down, or you just have a network failure, or I don't know.
It happens sometimes. For instance, since I'm also working for my thesis on Crusted, which is also a project from Days Labs, and I've seen that in their source code, for the time being, they have addressed the same issue by repeating the request and timing out, I think, after 5 minutes of trials. So maybe you could ask then what was the reason and the rationale for this. But yeah, sometimes it happens that the API server goes down mainly because of maybe network issues.
That's great context. Yeah, knowing that Crustlet's experience the same thing as expected, and how we could at least address it in the way they're addressing it, kind of have a timeout. It sounds like 5 minutes is kind of the Kubernetes default for waiting for things to come back. But Giovanni, would you be willing to add that perspective as a comment to Jurka's issue here? Maybe just saying just what you said, like Crestlet has a 5-minute
Okay.
downtime. That'd be good to take note of this conversation because it sounds like that might be a good first step. And then on top of that, Brian, like you were saying, documentation would be good of whatever decision we make. Great. So if we go to the roadmap, sounds like this is definitely something we want to address. So I'm going to go ahead and move it to backlog. What kind of labels do we want to put on this?
Do we want to call this investigating still, maybe? Because we're trying to come up with what the solution ought to look like.
Sure, that sounds good. And then I would say bug. Is that good with everyone?
Sure. And documentation too, probably.
And then is there anyone we can assign to this, or is this something we want to just look at and keep in mind?
I don't know. Why don't we keep it open for the moment, and we'll take a look at assigning it next week or something.
Sounds good.
Weeks from now, or whenever the next one of these things is, a month.
Okay, great. So right now with logging, there's a lot of it. And there's also not a lot of standardization of how we're logging, or that standardization is not documented anywhere. And so both of those things should be addressed.
I actually don't think there's a lot of log, because from what I can see here, he's using trace level, so that is expected. I mean, on Crestlet, even if you use the bug level, you really see a lot of the logs from the crane lift compilers itself. So compared to that, the Akri logs are much smaller.
Part of the issue might be that the images that we build, the containers that we build, have logging set to probably info or trace or something by default. So you by default get a ton of logging. We could look at setting that to a higher level by default, and then if people wanted to, they could ask for trace level or something. I think that's my takeaway from this. I sort of agree that, you know, at the trace level, the intent is that you can see everything going on, but maybe that's not what the default should be.
But if we build with the higher level of logging, someone would have to rebuild to get the more explicit logging level, correct?
Yeah, I think so.
So,
Yeah.
but with the highest level of logging, they could just grep for info or grep for error, and it would reduce the output.
If there's a way to set it in the like the pod spec or something, like if we don't specify anything in the container and then specify the env in the pod spec of our Helm chart, then does it become configurable?
I don't know, but that would be great.
Wouldn't that be neat?
That's something we should look at.
Yeah, that would be a very, I think, the best solution. Usually, in my opinion, it is expected that if you log trace level, you have a lot of noise, and usually at trace level, you also filter by the module name, so that you see only what you're interested in. If you just put a trace, I think it's expected on every project to be overwhelmed by the logs.
Sure.
Definitely. Great. So for this one, do we want to put it under investigating because we're going to look at that, or backlog?
I think it's backlog because it's quite simple actually. I don't think there's much investigation needed, in my opinion.
I think we might drop a comment into it to say, can this be accomplished by, through the Helm chart, or can we remove the logging mvar from the container and put it in the Helm chart so it's configurable?
Okay, I'm gonna start that here, and then that'll remind me I'll add that comment.
Okay.
Great. And so for labels, this seems like an enhancement, but it could also be thought of. Yeah.
Yeah,
enhancement.
Okay, great. Awesome. And then on to, and maybe before we move on from logging in general, Roa, did you want to add anything on logging? I know you've been looking a little into maybe standardizing that process.
I certainly think we could stand like a standardized approach, and I think the laying down kind of a policy for what we think it should look like would be a good idea. It would be helpful for people that are coming in, and I don't know that we need to like go back and overhaul everything, but if we've got that policy, then we can sort of say, as you touch a file, please update it or something, sort of a thing.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Maybe we, oh, sorry, go ahead, Roa.
No, sorry, I was trying to find how to unmute myself here. Yeah, so along the lines of what Brian was saying, I think we need to document our approach so that, yeah, as Brian mentioned, any newcomers can kind of at least know what kind of logging to add to new code, be contributing back to the project, and also guidelines for how to filter for, the most important logging, if statements, if we're running into issues and things like that. So I think that can translate to some documentation issue that we track as well.
Awesome. Ro, would you be willing to put up an issue for that so we can keep track of progress on that?
Sure, will do.
Great. Awesome. Okay, and then our last issue to triage. I have not looked at this. Brian, have you? I think this came out of Daz's webhook PR.
I haven't looked at it. I don't know a lot about Helmlint, frankly.
Me neither.
I mean, it sounds like maybe there are better Helmlint arguments, or I see, maybe we should update the Helmlint command that we run to actually specify some values. To specify maybe all of our values. I don't.
Oh, okay.
Helmlint doesn't do much if you're not providing values, I guess, maybe.
Yeah, that makes sense. Basically in our workflows, maybe we want to do more than just Helmlint is kind of the idea.
Yeah.
That seems
that, like, we add a like a single yeah, I don't know the best way to do it.
So do we actually have any Helmlint?
I think it's in there somewhere is what Des is saying. It's just like,
so we don't use any linter on our side.
I think in our
when we build the Helm chart, we run Helmlint on the directory, the Helm directory, but we don't provide any arguments, is I think what he's saying. So maybe we create a job that has, a matrix of options or something. I don't know.
Yeah, that sounds like a good step on that. Should that be an enhancement, or is this a bug, would we say?
That sounds like an enhancement.
Great. Is anyone interested in taking this on, or should we just move it to the backlog as is?
Stick it in the backlog.
Great. Awesome. So that is all of our triaging. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. Great. I'll pass it back to you, Edric.
Alrighty. I guess now that we've done triaging, kind of to end things off, there's two more things I want to bring up. So the first would be just general feedback, and then the last thing would be to do assignments for our next meeting. Giovanni, I guess I'm really curious about just your general feedback about the project, about our Slack community, about this meeting, just in general. Like, what are your thoughts on this project? Like, we're still fairly young, and we're still trying to learn from a lot of these different experiences. If you have any suggestions, feedbacks, comments, concerns, we'd love to take your feedback on that.
I don't think I have anything to complain. I mean, the project is still very young, but Kate have been very helpful, both in helping me to understand the project, and also she's very open to discussion. So I don't have anything particular to suggest. Maybe what I felt a bit is I think there's maybe a bit of lacking vision. What is the vision of Akri? I mean, the broader goal. What, for instance, what's the use case for Akri in your opinion? I mean, in a broader architecture, for instance, in Microsoft Azure, how do you see to use Akri? And maybe that's the only point I'm curious of.
Okay, that's a very good point. And is that something that you like from your perspective, for us that just having documentation, something we just discuss? And I guess this is definitely a point that we are a little bit lacking in. Talking with Daz, I think he also has the comments of like seeing more scenarios, seeing more use cases for this, and more like kind of concrete where this is used in certain projects and solutions and things like that. So yeah, kind of Giovanni, from your perspective, what do you think would be and sorry to put you on the spot, but what do you see as like like just having this in the documentation or having a scenario section or
yeah, maybe just in the documentation scenarios document, so that everyone can contribute and have a better idea of how Akri can be used.
Okay, that's really, really good feedback.
Should we start a HackMD with that? And people can kind of just put all their ways that they can think of Akri being used.
Yeah, I think that's a really good suggestion. I know Daz has that one scenario with the vaccine up in HackMD. I think we could kind of formalize that a little bit more, make it a little bit more open so anybody can really just kind of put up a scenario. Daz also suggested that we kind of have I think it was Daz, but basically have a page or like a feature of where Akri is used kind of in the field or basically beyond the end-to-end demos, like either write-ups that other people do. I've chatted with him a little bit about this. So, for the blogs that he writes, we can kind of compile that along with other community write-ups and community solutions into like one kind of compendium or page where people can kind of just scroll through and, get inspired from. That's something I can take action on. I can sort of set that up and figure out a flow on how to if anybody wants to contribute more at the scenario level and more at the scenario level, how that would work.
Yeah, I think that would be cool. Maybe then when there are enough scenarios and things are a bit more clear. I think, for instance, maybe I really liked one of the articles written on the Days Labs blogs about Crosslet, because it was one of those articles that made me interested in the project itself, and I think that could be done also for Akri. Yeah.
Was it any specific post for Crustlet? Is it the initial introduction one?
Let me this. I mean, what I was trying to say is that, yeah, at least in my case, I discovered Akri because I already knew what I was looking for. I was looking for something for IoT devices on Kubernetes, so I went straight on the GitHub to find something similar, and I found Akri. But for many other people who don't have the use case, they will never know about Akri if there isn't some article on it. So Crusted, yeah, I think it was just the article called Introducing Crusted where some WebAssembly kubelet. I think a similar article was also written in InfoQ, and the team itself also had a podcast, so on different places. And
Okay.
I saw that many people got interested in them in Crusted, also because of the maybe some ideas or vision of how it can be used. I think the same idea could be applied with Akri.
Okay. That's really good feedback. So really just conveying the vision, doing more scenarios, and I guess overall exposure to just letting people make it easier to be found even by people who aren't super deep into this area. That's really good feedback. I'll take note on that, and I'll work up some stuff for it.
Edric, I think it might also be good to maybe we go over what it would look like to propose items for the agenda for these meetings.
Yep. Definitely open to feedback on this point. The way we currently have it is that all of our notes sit in a hackmd file, and people can basically leave comments directly in the documentation. So the way that I've initially thought about it is basically for anybody who wants to suggest an agenda item, they can leave a comment in the agenda section of that document for the appropriate date. And then we'll basically go through that, go through the suggestion list and pull in all the agenda items that we should discuss. Another thing too is also just kind of ad hoc, basically in the meetings themselves. If people just have anything that they want to open, if there's anything that they just want to openly discuss, then we can do that too, if there's time for it. I don't know if that is a good way to do it. It's just sort of my initial thinking on how to do it.
And just to give people a visual of what that the developer and meeting notes looks like. This is the HackMD. You can just Google Akri HackMD. I could add a badge to our GitHub, or it's also pinned to the top of our Slack. But then you can just highlight on any point and leave a comment, maybe around the agenda. We're actively taking notes right now, so it's refreshing a lot. But then you could just say, interested in talking about how Akri could be used in this project, or have a question on use case X, Y, or Z, and just add it to the agenda.
Can I ask you, why did you choose HackMD instead of maybe GitHub? For instance, the WebAssembly committee is using just GitHub for also the meeting notes.
Yep. So this was a kind of interesting. It was an interesting choice. So we wanted something that people can collaborate on, and basically it came down to having. Well, first off, like anything, we wanted to separate out the documentation, like any non-code related things out of the main GitHub repo. So it kind of came down to basically something like HackMD or Google Docs, which was suggested. I had a chat over with the Crustlet PMs and kind of see what their opinions on how to run this. And I think they do it in Google Docs. So it was either Google Docs or this. And I just chose it because I thought it was kind of cool. And also, and also with Google Docs is that we would have to set up an account with Google with this, whereas with HackMD it was a little bit easier. At some point, if we were going to be governed by different foundations, like and yeah, at some point it might have to migrate to Google Docs. Honestly, this is just something we're trying out. If it's inconvenient or it's not as good as some other tools, we're definitely open to switching or using something else.
Yeah, okay. I definitely feel better using HackMD than Google Docs.
Yeah, I'm just curious, did you find GitHub easier to use, or you were just kind of wondering? Like, I was wondering if there's anything we missed in there by making that choice.
So to reiterate your question, is it, Roa, were you saying, is there is your question, is there anything sort of missing from the way we set up GitHub, or?
Yeah, actually, it was a question mainly for Giovanni. Like, since he said he worked on other projects where they use GitHub, and I'm trying to see what differences he found versus HackMD, for example.
Sorry, did you ask a question to me? Because I can't hear you very clearly.
Okay.
So,
yeah. Okay. Sure.
So maybe Adric, can you repeat the question for her, please?
So I think what she's asking is that, Giovanni, you've worked on a bunch of different open source projects. Is there any ways or any things you've seen the setup of other projects that might be beneficial for our project, or just kind of any workflows, or basically anything in our code base and the way we've set up GitHub that you think could be improved or done a little bit differently?
Yeah, I have participated at other discussions. I don't think there's anything wrong with the HackMD or anything on Google Docs. I mean, these are all different solutions that work fine. I have personally a preference of GitHub, because I prefer just to use one tool for everything if possible. In my experience, as I said, the WebAssembly working group releases the meeting notes on GitHub, and also on the Facebook React team. Since I work on front-end technology, they have a lot of discussions on GitHub on a separate project called RFC, request for comments. And so instead of using HackMD, they use a pull request or just issues to discuss about anything. And I think it's maybe easier than HackMD because you can use just GitHub. And also with the HackMD, I had the issue. I also wrote a comment for you, Kate, but I haven't seen if you replied. But I had issues with seeing if anyone replied to my comment, because every single time I have to open every single comment, check if there was a reply, then close, and I feel the flow is worse than the one with the GitHub pull request.
That's a good point, because yeah, I didn't receive a notification, and when we were chatting on the kind of the design for modularizing the discovery handlers, that was in my head to keep checking back on it, but that's not very efficient. So maybe there's some settings that we need to turn on to be notified, because it is, or at least I'm logged into HackMD with my GitHub account. So I would think that it should route notifications to my email just as GitHub does. So I'll look into that a little, but that's a fair point. If we can't set up notifications, then that is pretty persuasive towards finding a different tool.
Agreed. That's really good feedback. And something that we can do is also with HackMD, we can sync the notes to GitHub, so we can actually have a folder, I believe, of notes, and basically it syncs between the two. So You can do a pull request, you can do stuff in GitHub, and it just gets auto reflected in HackMD. That might be a little bit more complicated of a workflow. I think the overall sentiment is that pulling everything together into GitHub is a little bit easier. So I'll definitely take a look into that. Alrighty. Is there any more feedback, comments, concerns? If not, let's go with assigning for next week's or next month's meeting. Currently, we're planning to run these on a monthly basis. This was a suggestion from Karen over at Deus Labs. I'm not sure if this is too far apart or too close. Giovanni, do you have any opinions on it? Like running it monthly, is it too sparse or I guess too close or?
Well, I think you should choose something comfortable for you. For me, yeah, weekly is surely too close. Monthly, I think it's a good period of time, maybe. Or also 2 weeks. I don't know. I leave it to you. You know better.
Okay, sounds good. So I guess assignments for next month. I don't know what the best way to do this is aside from taking volunteers. I'm happy being moderator. I'm also down to switching it up. So
Brian, do you and I want to switch? That could be a little switch up.
Sure, we can do that.
Great. That sounds like a plan then.
Dynamite.
awesome. Well, thank you everybody for joining us for our first initial Akri developer meeting. I hope to see you guys next month when we run this again. I'll definitely remind everybody and send up more information on that when we get a little bit closer to that date. And once again, thank you, Giovanni, for joining us today. All your feedback's been really, really on point, and we'll definitely look into all the things and then update on the Slack.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you for your time.
Awesome. Thanks,
All right,
everyone.
bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.